answer to your question, there's literally three types of events that we call a stroke. One of them is when a blood clot travels through the arteries that lead to the brain and obstructs the blood vessel that actually is sending blood and oxygen to the brain. And so there's a brain tissue damage, and it causes weakness on one side of the body, left or right. So that's one type of stroke. Another type of stroke is what we call a hemorrhagic stroke. The previous one I just described is called an embolic stroke, to an embolus. And an embolus is literally a blood clot that flies through the blood and starts to clear the arteries. And at one point, the arteries become too narrow to be cleared. So the blood clot gets stuck there. There's damage to the tissue of the brain where that blood vessel was nourishing it. And so you have deficit, and that means causing a stroke. So the first kind is embolic stroke. The second kind is hemorrhagic stroke. The physical symptoms may be the same, but the actual symptoms that the patient feels are very different. So in an embolic stroke, in a blood clot stroke, you feel weakness and some dizziness, and sometimes you probably have some speech difficulty. But in a hemorrhagic stroke, actually a blood vessel inside the brain breaks and the blood starts leaking. And patients describe the feeling when they first get this as the worst headaches that they've ever experienced in their life. So you can't miss that if that's happening, and it could be very dangerous. Usually is caused by high blood pressure and some weakness of the blood vessel wall, so that the high blood pressure pressing on it, creates a rupture and the blood comes out. But hemorrhagic stroke are a bit more dangerous than embolic strokes, to be clear. Then there's the third category, which we call TIA, which stands for transient ischemic attacks. Same thing as the embolic stroke, but the difference is that at some point that blood clot that's trying to clear the blood vessel to continue its trajectory in the blood manages to go through that blood vessel. So what happens is it gets stuck for a short period of time, therefore causing the symptoms of a stroke. When you're having this, you don't know that you're not going to have a stroke. You think you're going to have a stroke. But then at one point, it manages to continue its trajectory and clear the blood vessel. So it opens up the blood supply to the brain again, and the symptoms disappear. By definition, so we call it transient ischemic attacks, or TIA. By definition, if anything lasts more than 24 hours grace, then we call it a stroke. If it clears before the end of the 24 hours, we call it a TIA.
I see. So it is interesting because what I had was the embolism. I had the blood clot.
That's right.
I experienced slurred speech and let's see what else, and facial droop. So that's my symptoms. But the other kind, the hemorrhagic one, is actually a headache. Like you can't miss it. So that's what you describing. Right?
Severe headache, exactly.
Yeah. And so you brought up a very good point. So sometimes these symptoms, if someone is experiencing something but it went away, they could be experiencing TIA. So they shouldn't ignore the symptoms, because they should go to the hospital right away in that situation.
Absolutely, and I can tell you, you may have been having a TIA. Because and I'm not suggesting to wait, that's not the point at all, but what I'm saying, that blood clot could have cleared your blood vessel and went away on its own, but you should never wait to find out if you have a TIA. Yeah. As soon as you get symptoms, and you were lucky in that instance where you had some people with you that actually took you to the hospital, but as soon as you have any symptom of that nature, don't think twice, just head to the hospital. Yeah.